and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 25 of Kill la Kill. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Ryuko had fought Ragyo in space, defeated her, and then fell back to Earth with Senketsu burning up in the process. So this episode, if I remember correctly, was released as an OVA, which is to say sort of like a direct-to-video kind of deal. So it's episode 25, but it's more of like an epilogue rather than a true episode, if that makes sense. So since Ragyo is out of the picture, Sanagayama wants to follow up on his, his ongoing ambition to have another duel with Satsuki to see who's the best. So, interestingly, even Sanagayama notices that something isn't quite right here, because he is able to push Satsuki back with seemingly little effort. So, his wooden sword breaks before they can really finish the duel. But he doesn't feel like fetching another sword. It seems like Satsuki's heart isn't really in it for whatever reason. So Sanagayama sort of shares with the group that Satsuki isn't like herself. Sort of like with Ragyo being defeated, that iron will she had is sort of gone with Ragyo. And I guess in a sense there's merit to that, because the whole purpose of Honnouji Academy was to oppose Ragyo. And at this point, everybody's sort of noticing that something's kind of up. So back in Hono Town, it seems like everybody's sort of moving out. I guess it makes sense in a sense, because without Honnouji Academy, there's no reason for everybody to stay. It really seems like, for whatever else the purpose of Honnouji Academy was, Satsuki effectively built a society. And without Honnouji Academy, there's really no reason for anybody to stay, so the whole place will become abandoned. So I guess it makes sense that everybody who formerly attended Honnouji Academy is transferring to a different high school. So Mikisugi, despite all the shady stuff he's done, he still wants to check up on Ryuko and make sure she's doing alright after the whole orbital reentry deal. Especially because she and Senketsu were essentially good friends. And ultimately, she is doing alright, which is reassuring. So, everybody's moving out, transferring to new schools, but everybody else, even the Elite Four, they're all moving on. They're either getting jobs, going to college, doing their own thing. So this is truly a dissolution of everything. But beyond that, Satsuki has sort of orchestrated all of this too behind the scenes. So the last thing there is the Honnouji Academy graduation ceremony. And I guess, if nothing else, it's a nice gesture on Satsuki's part. Well, interestingly, Soroi, Satsuki's butler, shares everyone else's concerns, but Satsuki insists that she's alright. So, this is where the plot, I guess, kicks off. There is another Satsuki, and Gamagori is apparently going back into his drill instructor remit. So Satsuki is apparently going back to her old thing about being the iron-fisted dictator of Honnouji Academy. And indeed, she seems to be wearing Junketsu, which Senketsu had absorbed wholesale. Interestingly enough, the Elite Four is also backing Satsuki. Albeit, we know they can't be real, since the real ones are just as confused as everyone else. Even more interesting, this fake Elite Four appear to have 3-star Goku uniforms. And they're nice and color-coded for our convenience to point them out as being counterfeit. So not only is everyone confused about what precisely is going on here, everybody's also in a very poor position to fight back. So Ryuko and the Elite Four are sort of getting into action here. Ryuko plans to hold the counterfeits off while the rest of the Elite Four evacuate all of the students. So this fake Satsuki decides that she's going to be the one to take down Ryuko rather than letting the Elite Four handle it. And just like the others, the color palette has been neatly inverted to show the deception. So, just in the nick of time, Sumugu showed up, and he's presumably brought some form of anti-Goku uniform weaponry. So apparently, Nunes Beach developed some custom DTRs for the Elite Four, but they never used them because they were so hideous. Of course, at this point, they don't have a choice but to use them. I like that line. Like, you never used them because you hated them. Mikisugi sounded so personally offended. So as it turns out, Homaru is the mastermind behind this. She was sort of, I guess, the power behind the absolute submission field. And when she was expelled from Shinra Koketsu, apparently survived and has continued plotting. So interestingly, Homaru is of the opinion that Satsuki didn't kill her because she wasn't worth killing. Whereas Satsuki, rather, was of the opinion that she shouldn't have to die needlessly. And in addition, Satsuki is willing to die to mollify Homaru. So I guess this is sort of an interesting little epilogue on the cycle of violence and vengeance and all that. Got a little flashback here, I guess, of some foreign war. And Ragyo intervened on behalf of Homaru, I guess because the residents of the village were valuable to her. So I guess in her own evil way, she did manage to do something good in this instance. So Homaru, having taken over Hinoji Academy, is activating a sort of weapon of last resort. The idea was this failsafe was put in place for handling the primordial life fiber, but Ragyo got the drop on Hinoji Academy, preventing its use. So, Satsuki is being held hostage as essentially the power source for this failsafe, but Homaru, thorough as she is, also kidnapped Mako as a backup power source just in case. So, Satsuki was willing to give up her life, but even if she did that, it would have been essentially futile. So meanwhile, Ryuko is fighting this false Satsuki, and even without a Kamui, she's holding up reasonably well. Especially considering she doesn't have the scissor blades either. She's fighting with the tailor's dagger. So interestingly enough, Homaru is sort of doing this as like karmic retribution. Satsuki, in her efforts to resist Ragyo, had done some morally questionable things in the form of oppressing the students of Hinoji Academy, so Homaru is sort of trying to turn that on them, so that they see what it's like to be on the receiving end. So Mako delivers an interesting speech about how even though these false Elite Four were made by the memories of the students that were oppressed, they are inferior to the Elite Four of now, just in the same way that the Ryuko and Mako's head pales in comparison to the real one. It's an interesting argument, but it, more than anything, serves to bolster everyone's resolve. No, ultimately, Ryuko and the Elite Four are able to cut the Banshee, the I guess, the master life fiber thread in all the Goku uniforms, thus sort of securing a tentative victory. Of course, there's still the Hinoji Academy DEFCON system they have to worry about. So in a sort of Deus Ex Machina, Ryuko is sort of thinking to herself about Senketsu and how if she gives up now, her sacrifice was for nothing. And Senketsu, presumably from beyond the grave, has sent the rending scissors back to Earth from space where they'd been hanging out. So this conflux has given Ryuko the resolve and the tools, more importantly, to fight back. So in response to fighting the gigantic, well, I guess, mechanized school building, Ryuko responds by making the scissor blades equally gigantic. There's definitely shades of Gurren Lagann here, with the scissors becoming increasingly larger, seemingly through willpower alone. Though, interestingly, Ryuko herself absorbs the life fibers once she destroyed the academy. Of course, things aren't entirely over just yet. Homaru is still intent on killing Satsuki, if nothing else. So Satsuki would have took the knife on the chin, or rather to the neck. And rather than retaliating, she's talking Homaru down. So Satsuki offers up her life if she steps out of line. I guess that's one way of putting it. But I guess to address some of the concerns from early in the episode, she hasn't truly abandoned her iron will, but rather it's adapted to the new conditions of the present. So rather than punishing an enemy as she might have done before, She forgives Homaru and welcomes her into their ranks. And so that last sort of scene we got is just a symbolic gesture of Satsuki cutting her hair and commanding everybody to salute Honnouji Academy. So it's a nice symbolic gesture, especially because she took a lot of influence from the military in the uniforms and the style of Honnouji Academy. So everybody sort of goes their separate ways. Ryuko is hanging out with the Mankancho family. Satsuki is going off on her own, and the Elite Four and student body are all going their own separate ways as well. Ultimately, I think this was a nice little epilogue that wrapped up some loose ends that were left hanging at the end of episode 24. Alright, well, that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, great, but this was the last episode of Kill la Kill. So, I guess tune in next time for whatever I'll be commenting over then.